Have you ever noticed those individuals who seem to possess an almost mystical influence over their surroundings without uttering a single word? They don't resort to shouting. They don't plead. They simply withdraw. And suddenly, everything transforms. The atmosphere shifts. People begin questioning, pursuing, feeling. Now envision yourself doing the same. If you ceased responding instantly to everything, if you embraced silence instead of automatic reaction, retreat instead of explosion, what might unfold? That's the essence of this insight. When you cease being perpetually available, emotionally, physically, psychologically, your environment experiences disruption because others have grown accustomed to controlling you through your reactions, impulses, and pulses. Predictability. But the moment you choose to withdraw, the dynamic shifts entirely. And those who believe they understood you discover they comprehend absolutely nothing about your true self. Carl Jung observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. Consider this. When you become inaccessible, who truly becomes distressed? Who grows irritated? Who attempts to provoke you merely to extract some emotional response? This reveals far more about them than about you. Most significantly, it exposes how extensively you're still being influenced without recognizing it. You continually give yourself away to please others, to maintain harmony, to retain people who at their core were never genuinely present for you. And with each forced affirmation, each immediate response, each emotional reaction, you surrender a fragment of your vital energy. By day's end, what remains? Exhaustion, dissatisfaction, and inexplicable emptiness. Allow me to explain why. You remain too accessible to those who haven't earned even a moment of your silence. This message isn't about turning away from the world. It's about choosing yourself. It's about engaging in what Jung termed individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, authentic, complete. This process commences when you understand that silence can wield greater power than countless arguments. That withdrawal, when stemming from awareness rather than escapism, represents an act of profound strength. So I ask you now, how long will you continue allowing yourself to be governed by others' emotions? How long will you react like a marionette whenever someone touches your vulnerability? Perhaps it's time to sever those strings, to withdraw, to become enigmatic. Because when you cease being available, everything transforms. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to remain constantly present, to respond promptly, to accommodate, to affirm even when your heart yearns to decline. You've been programmed to believe your worth resides in your availability to others. Yet here's a truth perhaps never articulated with such clarity. This excessive accessibility isn't virtuous, it's imprisonment. As long as you persist in believing you must remain perpetually accessible, whether emotionally or otherwise, you'll be manipulated, depleted, and dismissed once your utility expires. Why? Because constant availability renders you predictable, and predictability transforms you into a mere instrument. People begin using you as an emotional emergency resource, activating you when requiring attention, relief, or validation, then setting you aside afterward. Yet you remain oblivious to this pattern, trapped in the illusion that universal availability will ensure someone's presence for you. Life doesn't operate that way. Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we don to gain acceptance, affection, recognition. This very mask keeps you excessively available. You profess contentment while suffocating. You respond to messages instantly despite exhaustion. You explain, justify, and defend yourself as though indebted to the world. The truth remains. The more you position yourself at the center of others' stages, the more you vanish from your own. Perpetual availability represents a subtle form of self-abandonment, a disguised method of seeking approval, avoiding rejection, attempting to control others' perceptions of you. This control exacts a price: your tranquility. It's your vital energy being distributed as though infinite when it remains decidedly finite. Those demanding your constant availability don't truly want you. They desire what you provide: validation, companionship, distraction, emotional comfort. When you establish boundaries, when you refuse to react, these same individuals grow irritated, accusatory, declaring you've changed. Not because you've transformed, but because you've ceased functioning for their benefit. Here lies the harshest truth. The more available you remain, the less value others assign you. What exists in abundance becomes emotionally worthless. No one respects what requires no effort to obtain. No one treasures what remains constantly accessible. Pause now and consider, who genuinely merits your time? Who deserves your attention, presence, listening? Or better yet, who warrants your absence? Before answering, we must understand one fundamental question. Why do we react so readily? Why do we yield so easily? What underlies this almost mechanical compulsion to respond, justify, and please? The answer resides in what Jung termed psychic energy. This represents everything you possess. If you fail to safeguard it, someone will inevitably use it against you. Jung didn't perceive the human psyche as a mechanical device responding to stimuli without consequence. For him, our mind functions as an energy system. Every thought, emotion, and action consuming a portion of that energy. The question becomes, are you choosing where your energy flows, or allowing external forces to decide for you? Each impulsive reaction wastes psychic energy, defending against undeserving criticism, responding to provocations merely to prove correctness, engaging in pointless debates, attempting to please those who don't value you. No. You're expending inner strength on what provides no nourishment. Jung stated clearly that which you resist persists. The more you react, the more you remain bound. Those experiencing constant emotional depletion aren't weak. They're misdirected. And what happens to someone living in perpetual exhaustion? They become vulnerable. When vulnerable, you become easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally dependent individuals sense this. They recognize your inability to protect your energy, your reaction to everything, your constant attempts to resolve the world's problems, and they exploit these tendencies. Jung maintained that a healthy psyche knows how to preserve energy within its system. This means declining without guilt, remaining silent without feeling cowardly, observing before acting. True power lies not in reacting, but in choosing when and how to act. This becomes possible only when you understand yourself sufficiently to recognize your own impulses. How frequently have you lost sleep over unresolved conversations? How often have you spent hours contemplating what you should have said, or attempting to comprehend someone's poor treatment of you? This represents energy draining without return. You're sustaining ghosts that should have long perished and feeding dynamics that exist solely because you insist on responding. Psychic energy resembles a force field. When properly protected, it creates presence. You enter a room commanding respect wordlessly. When poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world shows no mercy toward those who yield easily. Begin observing your triggers. What provokes automatic reactions? What disrupts your center? These precise points where your energy escapes require your attention, not to become cold or indifferent, but to become selective, sovereign over yourself. Here emerges one of Jung's greatest insights. When you conserve your energy, you disrupt the projections others place upon you. This creates significant discomfort, leading us into darker territory, that of silent manipulation. You believe you maintain control. You think your emotional responses represent conscious choices. The truth proves darker. Most reactions follow programming. Those understanding this manipulate you effortlessly. Opportunistic individuals needn't raise voices, threaten, or force situations. They simply trigger exposed buttons, and you react predictably. Jung termed projection, the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot recognize within themselves. Yet another aspect of this phenomenon remains largely unnoticed. While others project onto you, you become the receptacle for these images. The more emotionally available you are, the more you transform into a blank canvas for these projections. Consider that friend who contacts you exclusively during crises, that partner perpetually needing rescue, that person praising you only while you remain useful. None occurs coincidentally. They aren't relating to you. They're relating to their conception of you, to the role you've agreed to fulfill. Why do you agree? Because you fear disappointing others, fear losing love, fear abandonment. The most effective manipulation doesn't occur through shouting but through silence laden with guilt. when you feel indebted to another, when you believe you must remain available, must assist, must understand, even as I.T. internally destroys you. Here lies the central point. The manipulator needn't control you directly. They simply need you maintaining consistent reactions. When you cease reacting, the pattern breaks. When you begin declining, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, projections crumble. The mask imposed upon you falls away. This unsettles people because they no longer recognize you. Worse, they're now forced to examine themselves, and not everyone is prepared for such confrontation. Your unavailability threatens because it compels others to face their emptiness. The silence you offer reveals internal turmoil they prefer not hearing. Then come attacks, criticism, emotional drama, not because you've erred, but because you've stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Jung noted that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, other shadows emerge. This proves unbearable for those who've always used you as escape. But what about you? Are you prepared to handle the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to endure the silence following rupture? Within that very silence, a new power awakens. Today's world overflows with noise. Everyone seeks to be heard, to respond quickly, to triumph in pointless debates and prove their perspective, even at the cost of inner peace. Yet there exists a power few recognize and fewer master. The power of silence. Not passive or cowardly silence, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind representing not absence but amplified presence. Jung viewed silence not as emptiness but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin observing. Through observation, you notice previously invisible patterns, emotional repetitions, manipulation tactics, self-sabotage cycles. Silence permits lucidity, and lucidity endangers those living to control you. Have you noticed how certain people panic when you withhold response? When you offer no explanation, when you simply disappear? Not because they miss you, but because your silence removes their narrative control. While speaking, you remain engaged in their game. In silence, you change the rules. This destabilizes anyone thriving on your reactions. True silence transcends mere vocal absence. It represents mastery over personal energy, refusing to be dragged into others' emotional states, consciously choosing to avoid battles unworthy of your energy. Jung maintained that individuation, becoming authentically yourself, requires this distancing, because only in silence can you hear yourself without external interference. Silence bears a cost. It distances you from those valuing only your functional role. It renders you incomprehensible to those viewing you solely through their projections. You may appear cold, distant, arrogant. All reactions from individuals who never sought your depth, only your utility. Here stands the difficult truth. As you mature, you become increasingly selective with words. Understanding each sentence represents an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes silence doesn't signify retreat but sovereignty, the language of those no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. Silence creates discomfort by forcing others to confront their thoughts, their internal noise. This discomfort reveals more about them than any argument could expose. You needn't explain your absence, it explains itself. Those threatened by it reveal their dependence on your imbalance to maintain control. Yet the most powerful silence isn't that which disturbs others, but that which rebuilds you internally, connecting you to something beyond external validation. Within this inner space, free from external demands, you begin recovering vital energy, reconnecting with your essence. Intellectual understanding accomplishes little if practically you continue affirming when meaning to decline, responding to bothersome messages, participating in empty conversations, maintaining relationships existing so lely through inertia. Awareness without action represents another form of self-deception. True transformation begins with firmly deciding to become selective, requiring emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability doesn't mean becoming cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It means no longer being accessible to everyone anytime, for any reason. It means controlling your energy, time, and peace. This begins with small actions, delaying responses, breathing before reacting, leaving discussions before chaos ensues, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, I'm not interested, I won't get involved. Most importantly, you needn't justify your absence or explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone except yourself. For many, this proves unforgivable. Refusing explanations removes others' power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you remain perpetually helpful, understanding, accessible. Jung recognized that every individuation process passes through isolation, not depressive isolation, but sacred withdrawal, an inner retreat where you relearn listening to your voice without external interference. Rebuilding identity not from others' perspectives but from your center. Want a reliable gauge of your evolution? Observe who distances themselves when you become more reserved. Notice who attempts provoking you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of changing when you finally begin self-protection. These don't indicate error, they prove your liberation has begun. Initial unavailability creates discomfort. You'll feel guilty, selfish, hear accusations of harshness, all part of deconstruction. Having spent your life conditioned to place yourself second, change naturally causes discomfort, not only for you but for everyone benefiting from your former self. Conscious unavailability forms the foundation of self-determination. Declining the world means affirming yourself. Withdrawing from toxic environments reaffirms that your peace outvalues any false connection. Ceasing self-explanation begins attracting respect, even from few. Not everyone is prepared for this presence. Your emotional absence exposes wounds they prefer avoiding, revealing their dependence on your emotional chaos for control. This brings rupture, pain, loneliness, distance, the sensation of losing something when actually liberating yourself. When you cease universal availability, profound transformation begins. First comes silence, uncomfortable silence seemingly screaming within you. You question your choices, wonder if you're being excessive, if you're losing those who appreciated you. Gradually, this silence transforms, cleansing, calming, healing. Then comes solitude. Not absence's solitude, but total presence. Your own. The solitude of the strong, of one no longer betraying themselves to retain others. Where confusion once reigned, clarity enters. Where anxiety dominated, peace arrives. Where neediness existed, new strength emerges, the strength of internal completeness. Jung maintained that individuation, becoming your authentic self, requires distancing from the collective, removing the mask, walking alone temporarily. This precisely matches your choice of unavailability. You're not escaping the world, you're returning to yourself. Here you cease being reactive and become creative. You stop being shaped by circumstances and begin shaping reality from within. Those uncomfortable with your absence reveal they never wanted you. They wanted your role. Now that you no longer fit, they're uncertain how to approach you. This liberates. You'll lose people but find yourself. You'll leave places but reconnect with your essence. You'll be misunderstood but finally respected. When no longer universally available, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. Make no mistake, this represents rebirth, new beginnings, the dawn of life where you're no longer available for emotional fragments, mind games, emptiness disguised as affection. Now you accept only what resonates with your peace, truth, completeness. If you've read this far, part of you stands ready for this path. Part of you understands that being loved means nothing if it requires self-abandonment. True self-love begins with choosing yourself, even at the temporary cost of solitude.